to working with all of you. This is week 5 for me in this role. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, but I do know administratively we probably need to approve the November 14th board meeting minutes. So let's get through that first. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any opposed? All right, minutes approved. So, hey, first thing I want to do before I get into myself is I want to thank Elaine. Elaine clearly has served as CEO in a very admirable way. And, as this transition was going on with Governor Braun, she agreed to stay on to kind of help us through the transition. So I just want to thank Elaine for her leadership and helping us through the transition, which, by the way, what I'm excited to announce is that Amy Howe will be stepping in as interim CEO to help us move forward. And when I made the announcement earlier this week to the team, a roaring applause came over. So I think A, she's a popular pick. B, I'm really happy about her leadership and helping us to continue to move forward. So Elaine, thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
And she's going to be here with us through the end of this month. So help with Amy in the transition. And she's also been kind enough to say, hey, if we need anything after that, she'd be happy to do it. But we're clearly going to leverage her over the next couple of weeks here. So I'd love to do.
By the way, I do want to thank Elaine. I think she's done a great job in moving us from where we were to where we are today. And I have the highest regards for you, but you've done a marvelous job. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate the comments. It's really been fun to build something new with all of you, helping us to do that and accomplish some really good things, good momentum. So, and I'm likewise pleased that Amy's going to be serving in this capacity moving forward, at least on an interim basis. And I think we're going to just keep pushing forward. It's going to be great. And I'm going to get out in the golf course, Steve. Maybe I'll get down there and play with you.
Hey, one other announcement. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
One other announcement that I'd like to have at the board level is that Aaron Schweitzer is going to be taking over for Selena Scardina. Selena is going back into her consulting practice, so we're excited that she's moving on. But I'm also very excited that Aaron Schweitzer is going to be joining our board. So Aaron serves as the VP of Strategy and External Communications for the IDDC. He's also the Deputy Director, Chief of Staff. So very excited that Aaron's going to be joining us as part of this process. And let's all just welcome Aaron as well. And I know we're kind of doing this virtual, but Aaron, I can see you. So good to have you. So what I'd like to do is really 3 things. And then I'd love to open this up for questions as well, because this is a new organization. One is love to just tell you a little bit about myself, my background. So kind of get a sense of what I am bringing to this new role. 2, talk a little bit about, and not a little bit, but talk about what the governor's objectives are. And there are 4 very specific things that he wants me to get accomplished with us collectively. And then from that, would love to talk a little bit about the vertical organization, because we have reorganized state government under Governor Braun into 8 verticals as opposed to 62, different agencies all kind of doing their own thing. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But by way of background, I was telling Jeff a little bit earlier, I am a University of Louisville grad. So I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, but Indiana has been my home for, well, let's just say it's been my home a long time. I don't necessarily need to date myself. But I really break my career into 3 areas. One is I've lived in industry. I was fortunate enough to be part of an organization, help create the supply chain management marketplace. And in the process, we became a NASDAQ 50 company. So I've got experience, in the public arena and taking a small venture and taking it public. I've worked with, Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with startups. I've created a number of businesses on my own. I was an operating partner at Carlyle, the private equity firm, also senior advisor with Boston Consulting Group. My point being is that I've lived kind of in the startup world, but also have lived in the Fortune 500 world as well. And so I hope to bring that experience, in terms of just the ecosystem of everything from startups to very large organizations to this particular position. I've also lived in public service. This is my 3rd time in public service. Candidly, did not expect that I would be in the position I'm in right now. But my first term was I got a strange phone call from a guy named Mitch Daniels back in 2005 and said, hey, I'm looking to bring business leadership into state government. And I said, you know, Mitch, I'm a revenue kind of guy. I'm used to growing things, but I've also been known to fix things. I know we're not in a revenue kind of mode. What do you have here that's broken? And he said, hey, I've got this pension system that it's taken up to 6 months to pay people. When we pay them, we don't pay them correctly. Why don't you see what you can do to get that turned around? And I couldn't spell pension at the time. Didn't know anything about it, but I'm very proud of the fact that we took it from what was considered to be one of the poorest run public pension systems in the country to now it's recognized nationally as one of the best run public pension systems. We're actually able to pay people on time. We pay them correctly. We help with education. We really serve about 500,000 Hoosiers. So at all aspects, not just the retirees, but people who are thinking about retirement. Mitch, in very Mitch ways, when I left that post, asked me to chair the Teachers Retirement Fund, and this is through the 2008 financial crisis, which is we could basically take an off ramp and have a whole discussion around that. But the whole idea was to combine the two systems. And so now the state of Indiana has one public pension system called IMPERS. There's about a $50 billion system. My second journey was with Governor Holcomb, as he was interested in having somebody help him through the legislative cycle back in 2022. So I was Commissioner of Workforce Development. As you'll see, workforce is something I'm very passionate about because I think it is not only A, the economic driver in today's economy, but B, is a constraining resource that we have in this state. And candidly, it's a constraining resource in any state that is in the U.S. today. So I served in that role, helping the governor. I served also in the governor's workforce cabinet. And then, as I said, this is a new role. Secretary of Commerce is a redefined role. And this is week 5 for me. And we are in a full legislative session, a full budget cycle. So, you know, you get that comment about drinking from the proverbial fire hose. It's a really large fire hose, but we're getting our arms around all of this. And then the third piece is I found myself in higher education, had not anticipated to be in higher ed, but I got a call from my alma mater, University of Louisville, who said, look, we're trying to connect the economic engine of our university to the business community. If you've been to places like Boston or Atlanta, you will see places like Kendall Square that's connected to MIT, or if you go to Atlanta, you'll see something called Tech Square connected to Georgia Tech. These are really the economic engines that are driving the community. So I was down at the University of Louisville for about 4 years, of which I served in that role, but they ran into some issues down there and asked me to be chief administrative officer. So I had responsibility for everything non-academic at the university. Had never done that role, but it was one I stepped in to help the university. The interim president left there and went to the University of Cincinnati, and I became the chief innovation officer for the university. And so I served there for 5 years, where we created something called the Cincinnati Innovation District, which was really connecting the economic engine of the university to companies like Kroger, P&G, Fifth Third Bank, you know, Great American, but as importantly, creating a startup ecosystem. So when I was at the university, we were producing about 1 startup a year. In the 4 years, so I was there 5, but in the 4 years I had responsibility for that, we started 89 new companies. And these companies had a CEO, got some initial funding, have a legitimate business plan. So we put a process together to actually help not only commercialize research out of the university, but then how do we connect with the other universities in the regions to actually help build the whole startup ecosystem. Governor Mike DeWine and Lieutenant Governor John Husted. John has just stepped down to fill J.D. Vance's seat in the Senate, so he just joined the U.S. Senate. But they took into our model and then created something called the Columbus Innovation District, anchored around Ohio State, and then the Cleveland Innovation District, anchored around Case Western, the Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland State, and a few other hospitals. And they infused $100 million into each of us to build an additional 15,000 STEM grads for each of these. So the state was able to talk about building 45,000 STEM grads, $6 billion in research, and candidly was a major component of landing Intel in terms of that $20 billion investment. And clearly there's some, if you follow the Intel story, there's some issues going on from a leadership standpoint, but workforce is the issue. And it was what drove Intel to come into Indiana, or not Indiana, come into Ohio and support it. Since then, Lieutenant Governor's also now built 3 innovation hubs anchored around Akron, Toledo, and Dayton. And that's going to be important for us as we move forward, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I'm a product of education. I'm a first-generation college grad, something I'm very passionate about. So here in Indianapolis, There's something called the Enlace Academy. It's a charter school on the west side. I was one of the founding board members serving on that. And then I've spent the last 14 years also at Purdue on the Purdue Research Foundation board, serving Mitch Daniels and then Mung Chang over the last 2 years. I just recently, of course, taken on this role, have stepped down from Purdue in December. So I bring experience, from an industry perspective, lived in public service and also higher ed, and hope to use these experiences to help support what we're going to do in commerce moving forward. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the organization that the governor's put in place, and then I'll get to the specific objectives that the governor's charged me with, which is where IDDC and everything else kind of ties into. So when the governor was taking a look at how we were organized, there were 62 plus agencies. And every agency, candidly, was kind of operating and doing its own thing. And part of the question the governor asked, as any business person would, is this the most efficient way to run this organization? Can we start to try to align things to help gain efficiencies, get a level of accountability, and try to get organizations to work together in a more efficient way so that we can serve the constituents of Indiana, be they citizens or be the employers we serve? So the governor has created 8 verticals. There's really a total of 11. But 8 verticals focused on the various areas. So we have the Office of Management and Budget, which is something Mitch put in place in 2005, but it's not just going to be about budget. Think about Office of Management and Budget being the COO for the state as well. We have the Office of Commerce. We have the Office of Health and Human Services, the Office of Energy and Infrastructure, we have the Office of Transportation, Business Services, but all focused on how do we create verticals here that align the various agencies with that specific function. And then we have the state police, and we also have the National Guard, and of course, the Lieutenant Governor reports to the governor as well. So you've got 11, if you will, total, but 8 that are really focused on the executive branch and what we're working to do. Within the commerce vertical itself, the Secretary of Commerce, up until this point, has also been the president and CEO of the IDDC, and that's been their exclusive role. Selena, did you have a
Oh, no, sorry, I was being interrupted. I apologize.
No worries. I just saw your hand go up, so I wanted to stop. But with this expanded role, it's not just the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, but it's the governor's workforce cabinet and the Department of Workforce Development. So the recognition that people are what's driving the economy today, how do we align economic development and people associated with that, the functions in state government to support that? Clearly, the IDDC, because of tourism, is very involved. And we start to think about marketing, not just within the state, but outside the state. How do we think about getting a consistent message as we communicate with constituents? There's also the Arts Commission and the State Fair Commission. And you might say, well, where's the Arts Commission and State Fair Commission? Well, the State Fair, as an example, had approximately 2 million people come through the events that they conducted over the last year. So those are 2 million people, not just Hoosiers, but also people coming from out of state. So it gives us a touch point to be able to communicate messages to those individuals as well. The ports, we have 3 ports in the state of Indiana. That's part of this organization as well as Elevate Ventures, which is the startup community, ARI, which is kind of really focused on federal grant funding. But that just kind of gives you a flavor for, what's within this vertical. There's clearly a lot of pieces to this. And part of my responsibility, I brought in a COO, is to kind of help us think through how do we help become more efficient in terms of, and when I say efficiency, I'm not necessarily talking about cost. I'm just talking about messaging. How do we align what we're trying to do as a commerce vertical? But I would continue to think about this. If you're familiar with marketing, which I'm not a marketing expert, but this is going to be a house of brands, not a branded house. So we're not going to replace all the things that we do, but we got to find ways to start communicating with a singular voice to the constituents we serve. So there's going to be a fair amount of work that's going to have to take place in that arena. So those are the functions that report to me in terms of formally how we're going to do this. And we have a lot to figure out. It's part of the reason Amy's the interim on this, not that I don't see her as potentially having the opportunity to sustain this on a full-time basis, but candidly, we need to think through how we're going to organize this the most effectively to serve the constituents that we do. So I'm going to lay out the 4 objectives, and then I'm going to take a pause and answer any and all questions that you might have, as we kind of go through this. So the 4 objectives that the governor has outlined is and I think this is most important, is we need to help move the economy of the state of Indiana forward holistically. So the one key piece to this is, how do we upskill the incumbent workforce to fill the high value, high wage jobs? So if you think about where we're at today, we have more demand, more job openings than we have available people to support those job openings. How do we help employers who have high value, high wage jobs that are going unfilled? How do we help them see that there's incumbent workers inside the 4 walls of their organization that potentially could fill those jobs, but are going to require some level of training or education in order to be able to do that? We're creating something called the Hoosier Workforce Investment Tax Credit. It's a mouthful. But today in Indiana, if a company invests in equipment that increases the productivity of their business, we give them a tax credit. We're going to do the same thing for human capital. A recognition by the governor that human capital is the most vital resource. How do we maximize opportunities for individuals on wages? How do we maximize opportunities for businesses relative to helping them increase profitability, given this limited resource that we have, in the state of Indiana? And by the way, the limited resource we have in the state of Indiana is the same limiting resource in every state across the nation. This is not an issue that is unique to the state of Indiana. So that's number 1, upskill the incumbent workforce. Number 2 is, let's focus on existing employers. Commerce to date has really been about business attraction. And so how do we bring new companies into Indiana? We're going to pivot and really focus on the existing businesses in Indiana. And we're going to do this on a regional basis. So we're not going to have, quote unquote, a statewide strategy that says we're going to be a life science state. We will look and say, unique to Marion County in this area right here, what's authentic and genuine to us is life sciences. We have the largest medicine company in the world here. We have the 2nd largest independent animal health company in the world. And we've got a very large ag company in Corteva here. How do we talk to them? And so as an example, I've already sat down with Dave Ricks and asked Dave, who else should be here? Who do you want here? How do we recruit and attract the businesses that would be accretive to what you're trying to do? Not necessarily accretive to what we think you might want to do, but let's sit down and really understand that. Likewise, if we go to Fort Wayne, or we go to Columbus, or we go to Evansville, the needs of that community are going to be very different than they are here. So we're going to start to rethink, how do we do things on a regional basis? How do we start to look at what's genuine and authentic to that particular community? And how do we build around the strengths of that community and really focus on that on a regional basis? So that's the second thing, a very focus on existing businesses and what I call a proactive approach to how we're going to bring companies into Indiana. And I think that's really important, because right now, a lot of economic development in our state and other states is a beauty contest. It's like, we're shopping you against other states and tell me what you can do for me as opposed to someone else. We're actually going to shift that mindset. And we believe Indiana is a very special place to be. So strategically, you're going to have to help us understand why you should be here. And we're going to have a very strong value proposition to those businesses. But our intent is to call proactively on those companies and make our case for why they need to be here, as opposed to just because you want to be here, we somehow going to find some incentives or something to put in place. The third piece is, how do we help entrepreneurs in Main Street, Indiana? So clearly, if you think about Elevate Ventures today, it's a venture capital focus, like how do we create the next Google, or, to create the next Amazon, whatever it may be. We have approximately 185,000 small and mid-sized businesses in Indiana. We want to create an innovation and entrepreneur environment focused on helping innovators who want to either buy one of those existing businesses. How do we help really accommodate that? Or if they want to have an existing business, they want to expand that business, what can we as the state be as a resource to help support that? So if you think about this today, if you're in the venture capital world, we have accelerators, we have incubators, we got venture capital, we got entrepreneurs and residents. We've got a whole ecosystem set up to support somebody who wants to create the next Google. What we really don't have is a definitive same set of resources to be able to support those innovative entrepreneurs that want to focus on those Main Street businesses. So we're really going to get laser focused on that. The legislature, as we speak, is formally creating an office that'll report directly to me that is going to not only illustrate the importance of this function, but we're going to build out what are all the capabilities and things that we need to do to be able to support that. And then the fourth thing is we as a state have been afforded by the EDA 3 tech hubs, one in hydrogen, one in microelectronics, and one really in life sciences. The important part about this is these things have been developed from the bottom up. They've got very limited funding that comes with them. And so, again, just like we're pivoting in terms of how we're going to approach new businesses and how we're going to work with existing businesses, we're going to pivot. And instead of looking at the bottom up, we're going to look and say, okay, here in Marion County, as an example, life sciences should be a core capability and a core beacon to the world about what we're doing here in Marion County and the surrounding area. We're going to create a vision, a strategy, and a plan to build these innovation ecosystems, to build these places where startups to big companies can actually co-locate. And we're going to do this on a regional basis. The importance of this is that college grads today have got to see the kinds of opportunities that exist within a community. And so what these innovation ecosystems afford us the ability to do is to illustrate, one, I mean, helps businesses out because they have a place where they can go innovate, but two, provides an opportunity for college grads to see that, hey, within that community, there are lots of opportunities for me to have a lifelong career. And we could spend more time in terms of why this is important. But if you think about those 4 objectives, okay, upskill the existing workforce, focus on existing businesses within Indiana, build an innovation and entrepreneur system on Main Street, Indiana, and then a focus on building these innovation capabilities within a region. We're canvassing all aspects of the workforce. We're focusing on people who are in the existing workforce. We're focused on people coming into the workforce. But as importantly, one of the big challenges we have is the retention of college grads. How do we help communities really get focused on the attraction and retention of talent? So those are the 4 things that I've been given by the governor. The 4 things we're going to work on. I'm assembling in a team to help support this. I've already brought somebody in to run the IEDC. He's a gentleman that's taken Vera Bradley public, was part of that leadership team. He's also been CEO of 3 to 4 private equity-backed businesses. So I'm building and bringing in business leadership to help us assemble the right team to help support what we need to do. Accordingly, there's a lot of work and effort, not just inside the 4 walls of what we're trying to do as an organization, but how we're going to organize to help support, all the citizens of Indiana. So I'm going to stop there. I know it's a mouthful. I've probably been talking for, well, it looks like close to 20 minutes. So let me stop. I've thrown a whole bunch at you. Let me hear what questions you have, and nothing is off the table relative to things you might want to talk about. And I know there's got to be good questions because, I know I did a reasonable job of explaining what we're doing, but I've got to believe there's going to be some things that are still on your mind.
So a
David,
lot of
this
the
is,
work we did at
sure.
IDDC was really about, collaboration throughout the entire state with our tourism campaign that raised great visibility. I think the metrics that Amy, I'm sure, has shared are pretty strong. What's your vision around, the attraction to our state? How do you, all these, your pillars are terrific, and I think will serve our state really well. So thank you for outlining those. How do you, coming from your different backgrounds and experiences, where do you see the emphasis for attracting outside folks to Indiana, or just the role of tourism and the destination play?
Yeah, so let me hit both of those because I think they're both very important questions. One is I think we've got to start thinking about things on a regional basis. So if you think about individuals or organizations outside the state of Indiana, and really outside any state, nobody thinks about Indiana or nobody thinks about Ohio or Michigan. What they think about is a specific city. They think about Austin, Texas, or Nashville, Tennessee, or Atlanta, Georgia. So I think one of the things that we need to figure out collectively is how do we help regions or help specific communities really brand themselves within the state of Indiana, but brand themselves that they become an attraction mechanism or a retention mechanism. I don't know that we can just say blanket we're going to do this as a state. And by the way, I'm just giving you some initial thoughts here, but I think one of the things that's going to be really important is we can go out and market the state, but candidly, at the end of the day, people are really going to, if they're thinking about Fort Wayne or thinking about Columbus or Evansville, we've got to be able to talk to what's specific to those areas. So this is going to be very much a collaborative effort in terms of we're not going to be, and I'm saying commerce in general, we're not going to be the smartest people in the room. It's going to be how do we collaborate with the regions to understand what tools and resources do they have and what can we do to be accretive to what they're working to do. In terms of your broader question, Allison, in terms of tourism, clearly tourism and how we market, out of the state, in the state become critically important. But we also got to figure out how to get on the same page. And so the example that probably is staring us all in the face is, I've got the In Indiana brand. I'm just using this as an example. And I've got the For the Bold brand. And they're both, portraying two different messages. Now, by the way, I am not planning to come in and do another branding exercise. Okay, that's not my intent here. But it is, how do we get on the same page relative to how we're communicating to the markets we serve? And I think that's going to require some effort because I think we've got a lot of messages from tourism. We've got a lot of messages from the IDDC. But one of the questions that I'm asking my team, and this will kind of help put it in perspective for our group and what we're talking about here, is why Indiana? If I'm talking to somebody outside the state of Indiana, and I was to say to them, here's my value proposition about why you might want to consider Indiana, I can just share with you, we don't have a consistent message today. Depending on who you ask, you get a different answer. And again, I am not a marketing expert, but I do know that you have to have something that's genuine and authentic to who you are. You can't be something you're not, but there needs to be a level of consistency to that message too, so that we can have a consistent message to the people we're talking to. And so we're going to have to do some work in that arena because it's just not something that we've had to do in the past. And if you think about now pivoting to a more proactive approach of really going after and targeting organizations that we want here, we're going to have to get real crisp about what that message is. I am a firm believer, Allison, that companies locate around where talent is and not vice versa. But in today's market, especially around highly educated talent, the way they think about the job market is so different than my generation. And I'm not going to completely date myself, but when I graduated with my master's degree, I was told, pick that first job very carefully because you need to be there 7 to 10 years. When I say that to my 29-year-old daughter, she's like, what? Be somewhere 10 years. Depending on what research you read, and it varies, but the research would say that a college grad today will have between 12 and 20 jobs over a 30-year career in 5 to 10 different careers. So when they're picking a city, they do expect to have a nice place. And by the way, there are lots of nice places in the United States, lots and lots and lots of nice places. But what's important to them is they've got to see the job opportunities. So they've got to see those 12 to 20 jobs. And so part of building these ecosystems is we've got to have the ability, whether it's in Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, West Lafayette, wherever it may be, we've got to have the ability to illustrate this, to those college-age individuals, not just when they're in college, but after graduation as well. It makes it otherwise very difficult to retain that talent here, and it makes it extremely difficult to attract the talent. Now, being, I would say, a lifelong Hoosier, one of the arguments I've heard is, we don't have the mountains and, we don't have the oceans. And I thought that argument was dead maybe 20 years ago, but I've had people in the past 5 weeks bring this up. And I said, okay, well, then explain Austin, Texas and Toronto, Ontario. Right. Because if you've ever been to Austin in June or July, it is absolutely miserable. I mean, it is not any place you want to be. And likewise, Toronto, right now in January, February, it is the tundra. Right? Why would anybody move to location? I'll use Indianapolis as an example because we're here, but Toronto was about the size of Indy back in the 1970s, about 2.2 million. Toronto today is 6 million people. And they have set as an objective, this was all pre-COVID, that they want to go to 8 million people. Now, I'm not here to debate whether that's a good or a bad thing, but they recognize that people are the economic development engine, and they have become the largest financial market outside of New York City in North America. So this gets back to the thematic things as well about what's genuine and authentic to the regions in which we're working. How do we help those regions build upon those strengths to actually attract and retain the talent they need within those communities? So Allison, it was a long-winded way to say, hey, I think we've got to focus on a regional basis to build this. And I think we've got to get a consistency of message. And I think we've got to be able to live and be truthful to the things that we're saying, that we can actually illustrate those things here in Indiana. And I think if we do those things, that will bode well for us to not only attract businesses, retain the businesses we have, but also, most importantly, attract and retain the talent that we're going to need to support the businesses that we have here today and the ones that we might want to have in the future.
No, great. Thank you so much.
David,
David,
I'd
this is,
like to.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask about a little bit of what you talked about with regionalism. I serve as our chair of our RDA in Southern Indiana. So just wanted to understand your thoughts about the value of what's happened in our regional areas with the READY program.
Yeah, and so Dana, it's a great question and something I'm getting ready to get my arms around. So we have 15 ready regions, and I'm planning to go on a very extensive listening tour to understand A, what's working, what's not working, B, what we as an economic development function can be to support that. I know a lot of these things have been around placemaking to date. What I really would like to focus on, Dana, when I come to visit with you and the rest of the team is, what other innovation assets do we have here? And more importantly, what's genuine and authentic to that specific region? Are you a Southeast or Southwest?
I'm Southern Indiana, so it'd be 30 minutes outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
Got it. So I've been
near New Albany and Jeffersonville.
So I've been talking to Paul Perkins about what's going on in River Ridge and some of those things. And we've already just started to have some conversations. And again, we'll want to do this as a group, but how do we build some of the innovation assets there that will actually help attract and retain the talent within that particular area? So I'm planning to go on these very extensive listening tours and try to understand with the READY programs today, like what's working, what's not working, how are we doing against the metrics that we've established? And with the READY 2.0 dollars and also with the Lilly Foundation commitment, do we stay on the path that we're on collectively, or do we pivot and maybe try to reorient some things? By the way, I don't have an opinion about any of this. Is really wanting to work with the community just to figure out how do we leverage those resources in the most effective ways to help the economy.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so that's the intent. The challenge I'm having, candidly, and we're going to start with the READY regions, is I have 12 workforce boards. To your point, we've got regional development authorities. We've got LEDOs, we've got REDOs, we've got IDDC has its own, it's how do you communicate to effectively, work with that region. So we're going to start with the READY regions, but part of this is me learning to, is this as effective as what the regions hoped they were getting out of this? And ultimately, it should be how do you grow the region, right, in terms of what you're trying to get accomplished. So.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to your visit. So again, congratulations and welcome to our state. We're excited to work with you.
Well, I'm excited as well. I'm looking forward to working with all of you too.
I think Steve Ferguson has a question.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, it's pretty specific, David. Well, a couple. Let me tell you two or three things. One, in our area, our immediate hiring area here, Cook, we've got 25,000 people who do not have a high school degree, and of course, they can't come to work for us. So we've had this program of you come to work for us, you work in a job that doesn't require it, and you go to Ivy Tech and get your high school equivalency, and then you come to work for us. And that has been, number one, it gives you a source of employees because that's a big pool. And then we provide them the opportunity for the pay tuition all the way through master's degree. And it seems to me a lot of times we are awfully concerned about the upper end here, but with these 500,000 potential employees in Indiana, I think for your tax credits and things, you ought to think about them. The second thing I thought was rather interesting, Preferred Hotels was in doing a site inspection down at the resort over for the last 2 or 3 days, and she had never been there before, and I had lunch with her, and I asked her, what's the most impressive? Because I think our facilities are competitive with anybody. And she said, your staff, which I thought was an interesting answer from a very observant person who sees a lot of resorts worldwide that Prefer has in their portfolio. I think one of the things that we forget is how good we are already. And I don't want to do, I don't think we ought to do that. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that we've got a lot of good employees that are here now. It's a matter of us getting them to the right job and the right level of education. And then the third thing I'd say, I think the READY programs have been the best thing I've seen the state of Indiana do to bring our whole state back. We've got half our counties have declining populations. And when you have declining populations, schools go down, businesses go down, et cetera, et cetera. And we can't be a state with half our counties with declining populations. And so I hope in your efforts here, on your regional efforts, that we put some emphasis on trying to turn these rural counties around. I would tell you that the first thing I'd start with is housing. Because if you don't have housing, you don't have a place for people to work, you don't have a job. And in these rural areas, like in Orange County, where we're building those workforce housing projects, it's the first subdivision since 1964 in that county. But the houses, we had 25 people show up for our latest open house. The demand is there. People will come back to the county and they'll come back to work, but we gotta have houses for them. And I think you need to put that on your agenda too.
So Steve, a couple of things. I'll go from the first one and I'll come to your housing. Housing is on the, it's not one of the 4 priorities, but clearly is one of the components of what we're going to need to have in order to be able to, keep talent, attract talent, and it has to be affordable housing too, right? But let me come back for a moment. So today in the state of Indiana, we do have the employer training grant and the workforce ready grant that is focused on individuals that either are low income, unemployed, or underemployed. And if you think about first, that program doesn't go far enough in terms of, it only canvasses a limited set of individuals today. We also have approximately 400,000 individuals in Indiana today that do not even have a GED, but we're only able to address today about 25,000 a year. I mean, you can kind of do the math and see how long it would take. We want to try to accelerate that. So my point about focusing on the high value, high wage jobs isn't to say we're doing that exclusive to this. It's to say, well, we've already got programs in place doing some of this, but in terms of employers with the limited workforce we have to even be able to fill some of these slots, there are no programs in place to be able to do that today. So that's the intent of the Hoosier Investment Workforce Tax Credit, is say, how do we canvass the entire, side of the market? The second thing that you talked about is we do have a lot of good things happening in Indiana. The challenge we have here in the Midwest, and it's not just an Indiana thing, is we're very humble to the point where we're not really telling these stories. And so even this example, Steve, that you talked about of where you've developed a program to take people who don't have a GED and kind of put them through a process, we've got to be able to illustrate this to other employers as a mechanism that, hey, you can do this too, and here's a potential solution. Because part of the disconnect that we have is that where Cook is innovating and you're doing some creative things, I can walk right into another employer who's like, I can't find the people I want. And instead of trying to rethink the problem to say, well, you may not be able to find the people you want because they're already gainfully employed. How do we look inside the 4 walls of your business to see how we might be able to upskill some people? And we have examples of this, by the way. Community Hospital here in Indianapolis has taken medical assistants and converted them to nurses, because their point is when we go out into the market to try to hire nurses, we can't hire them. I mean, there are no more bodies out there. And if we want to get them, we're just paying higher and higher rates. So they said, we know that we have people who've worked for us for a long time. They're dedicated to us. Let's go train them. And by the way, they've taken people from $16 an hour to $30 an hour. It leaves medical assistance positions open, but they're like, we can figure out how to build a pipeline of other individuals that could fill those roles. because it's a little bit easier to fill something that has lower skills than higher skills. But we recognize even if we have to automate some of those jobs, those aren't the ones that are driving our organization right now. So it's trying to help amplify where we're having successes. How do we help others understand in our state that you can do this too? And here are the opportunities to do it. I think we're going to end up having a lot of town halls to help illustrate this, but I think you're going to see us do a lot more marketing, if you will, in state. This isn't about marketing everything we do out of state, but how do we help illustrate the wonderful things that are happening in state and help others understand how to take advantage of this? I mean, I don't look at the state, and I got asked this question at the Ways and Means Committee. I don't look at the state as being the overlord or, help, telling employers what to do or how to do it. I mean, for-profit entities, how do we help support this? But how do we amplify the successes that they're having? Because this is, I don't know if you saw or was published to you, but the U.S. Chamber did a study that they published in September of this year. And there was a whole bunch of analysis, but they looked at the demand of jobs versus supply. Indiana, for every 100 job openings we have in Indiana, we only have 72 people. So if you looked at our unemployment rate, it's about 4.5%. If you really actually look at people who are unemployed who want to work and those that actually want to find a job, it's less than 200,000 people out of a workforce of 3.3 million. Now, I'm not here to debate whether it's good or bad. I'm just saying we're in a full employment situation. If you look across all 50 states, if you look at this report, every state has more job openings than they have supply of talent. This is not an Indiana thing. And the challenge we collectively have is that as baby boomers continue to exit the system over the next 20 years, you're not just losing people, but you're losing decades of experience. But we've also had declining birth rates since 2008. So my point is that we've got a tighter, we have a tight labor market today. It's going to get tighter. It's not going to get looser. I mean, everybody's trying to attract talent. When I was in Ohio, they were trying to attract talent from Indiana, and Indiana's trying to attract talent. I mean, everybody's kind of trying to move this around. I think if we can become the state that really is focused on talent and individuals can see that they can have a career here and that businesses actually can help them progress, I think that's a good thing for us. I think that's an opportunity to attract the talent, to retain the talent, but the focus is going to be on talent and how do we develop that? And Steve, your points are all extremely valid. These are complicated issues. Housing is going to be an important part. Infrastructure is an important part. You're going to see energy becoming a bigger and bigger part of the discussion with employers because everybody's concerned now about these data centers and the energy requirements these things take. So we're going to see a lot of pieces to the conversation. Our collective challenge is how do we stay focused? And when we are having success around things, how do we amplify those successes inside the state so that others can learn from those successes, take those into their communities and move them forward? And I see go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. By the way, you hit on another issue, which is healthcare. If you don't have good healthcare, you've got to have that. The nursing issue, I've been on the trench on. I think that about a third of our qualified nursing applicants don't get positions because we can't get the clinicals. I think I've been working here in Bloomington. I think we figured out how to do that. We're doing a pilot project at Ivy Tech, which if we can spread it across the entire state, as I think it'll work out, I think we can really make a dent in the nursing shortage. This is another issue that's there.
Steve, I was just going to say thank you. I mean, it's these kinds of examples. I know there's good work going on. We've got to find ways to amplify this, and get past our humbleness as Hoosiers to really amplify these stories for individuals, but also amplify them, as importantly, for organizations to understand, hey, there are some ways that you can solve, maybe not completely solve, but start to address the most critical issues. And how do we work together to understand that and make sure, like I said, we're amplifying it to others people are smart. You kind of illustrate what needs to be done. I think people will figure out how to take advantage of it.
Hey, David, this is Matt Eckert with Holiday World. Want to echo Dana Huber's comments and welcome you to the team. Very, very happy to have you and very excited about the objectives you've outlined. Just kind of wanted to touch base. I know everyone on this call is familiar, that our budget from prior year of 20 million has dropped down to 5. Can you give a little background of what led to this decrease and kind of what you see as the evolution to get the budget to where it needs to be to accomplish the objectives that you outlined, as well as continuing to market our state to make sure that we do find our consistent messaging?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So Governor Braun, and it wasn't just IDDC. I mean, he kind of took a look at this across and saw that there was some increases in terms of resources that were being allocated. And so what the governor did is he took us back, whether it was IDDC or IEDC or other agencies, took us back to a time when, maybe the spending wasn't at that level. And I realized that IDDC was a startup, and so things have kind of moved. But what he's asked me to do is to say, okay, dig into this and let's try to understand, okay, I've got the IDDC, but I also have the IEDC, I've got all these marketing budgets. Are there ways that we could be more effective in terms of how we allocate this? Now, we're not a for-profit entity, so it's not like I could just easily integrate all this and say, okay, we're going to have one marketing function and it will own tourism and it will own marketing for all these other pieces. So we're going to have to work through that. But the intent would be, we've got a lot of other resources around, Matt, that we're going to look at. And we'll see how this all plays out, in terms of this. But, the governor wasn't, through this whole budget process, wasn't trying to pick out like certain agencies. What the OMB did is they looked for what agencies have grown rapidly in terms of dollars that were allocated. Let's just take that back and let's start to do some due diligence to try to understand, what's actually going to be needed. So I would say things are in pencil right now is the way to think about it. And what, we're going to see the House pass out a budget, but regardless of what this ultimately occurs, given he's a business mind and I am too, we're just going to want to make sure that everything we're doing has an ROI associated with that, and make sure that we get to a point where there's a consistency in terms of how we're communicating. And I don't know exactly how that's all going to work out right now. So, Matt, the commitment is that tourism is really important. It's quote unquote not going away. What the ultimate dollars look like, I can't sit here and tell you what that's going to be, but we may have to, like anything else in a business, if in fact we are constrained in some form or fashion, how do we ensure that the dollars that we do have, whatever those are, that we're maximizing the value of those particular dollars?
Sure, I appreciate that, and I think you have a very solid and knowledgeable board here that's willing to get behind you and help make all of this happen.
Absolutely. Well, and again, this is going to be a team effort. I mean, candidly, I'm going to look to this board and to others. I mean, we to really address some of the issues that we're talking about, and you're going to see from my organization, we're going to get very focused on metrics and economic metrics. And part of the challenge, candidly, that we have right now is our GDP per capita is continuing to move in the wrong direction. So we've got to address this. And so, one of the things that's important to the governor, thus it's important to me, is we need to look at the financial metrics in terms of the people we serve here. And are we actually helping those people advance their lives, advance their careers? Wages is one mechanism to do that, but the opportunities are going to be another piece of this. So I just want to share with you, we're going to get very metric focused as well. And how are we doing? And, if programs are working, maybe we apply a little bit more dollars here. Programs not working, maybe that program isn't something we do, or, we minimize some of that. So.
I think, David, too, if you look at Holiday World and you look at the French Lick Resort, the economic impact on our particular rural areas is tremendous. And your return on investment there, these few magnificent tourism draws is enormous. So I understand exactly what you're saying, but when you're thinking about think about the impact that we're having as a return on that investment.
Well, totally agree. And I think the return, I'm not here to say that it's not important, because Steve, Matt, everyone here totally get it. It's trying to figure out with whatever resources we have, how do we apply those the most effective way? And so I get an example back to workforce again. I heard recently, we need more childcare workers. And I'm like, I'm not here to debate whether we need more childcare workers or not. We may. But the trade-off decision is if the state wants to incent that behavior to get more childcare workers, what it means in this environment that we're in with a very constrained labor market is there certain other jobs that are going to go unfilled. I'm not here to opine about trying to prioritize these things. I think we can help regions understand what are some of the most in-demand jobs within their region, but it's up to the region to figure out how they want to apply the resources, because unfortunately, we don't have enough individuals to go around to fill everything that needs to be filled. And so I think I would think about it that way as we continue to have this dialogue, which is, even if we quote unquote get restored back to the, let's say the 20 million is okay, there still may be $40 million of demand out there, just playing with some, how do we apply this the most effective way? And I would also contend, like, how do we leverage what is happening in the regions more effectively to build on what they're doing? So it's not just us doing it. So I know here in Indianapolis, at Taylor Swift, do they, and again, not here to opine, but do any tourism dollars need to go into this area? Because, they're self-sufficient. I'm not here to say they are. I'm just saying, I think we've got to look at some of this too and just make more informed decisions about how we use whatever resources we have. Because all this is important. There's nothing that's not important. It's just, how do we apply it the most effective way?
Secretary, can I just mention that Matt Ecker got appointed to the U.S. Commerce role in U.S. Travel and Advisory and Tourism Advisory Group. So that's great for the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and it's great for Indiana to Matt to be on that and then bring these best practices back to Indiana. So this is great for us.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Matt.
I'd like
Definitely an honor.
to, sorry, congratulations,
Hi.
Matt. Welcome,
Bernice.
David. I certainly appreciate you sharing the vision there. That is helpful for us. I think we all recognize the challenges ahead, but also opportunities lie within that. So I'm Bernice Hellman. I represent the Indiana Association of Realtors, a proud partner with the IDDC. So my question's twofold. One is, is there vision in enhancing that public partnership as we look for ways to, balance our budget and move forward with that? What does that look like? What's that conversation sound like? And then, of course, I would be remiss in my role with housing if I didn't chime in on this conversation. I'd love to have more one-on-one conversation there, but I think we're at a critical point with the housing projects that we have funded with Ready 2.0. I do have some concern. I think we need to really buckle down and work with those projects that we've funded to be sure we're removing the red tape and that we're, moving the needle to get those projects completed and get housing inventory on our housing rolls there. I met with a recipient yesterday in Goshen, a 1,200 housing units, some rentals, multi-generation, some townhouses, some condos, some single family dwellings, but just really the frustrations that they're meeting and getting that off the ground and getting that inventory available. So I hope that we can provide some support there, make sure we're really getting those things off the ground. I also have some concerns. So much of that funding went into rentals. I think as a state that needs to concern all of us. There are certainly many attributes that come with home ownership that will impact the state as a whole, and focusing on that affordable housing part of it is really important. But we'll catch up on that later because my colleagues have all heard this from me before. So, but yeah, I just mainly, and when we look at these funding sources and how we continue the work and build the work at the IDDC, what's your opinion and take on the public funding?
Are you talking about public funding? Like, is there going to be a Ready 3.0 or I'm trying to.
All across the board, sponsorships with corporations, if our goal is to help them, can we leverage that to get more sponsorship money to help continue the work of what we're doing here?
So at a statewide level, I think you probably, you're all aware of the issues that we're facing from a budgetary standpoint, right? With Medicaid, and Medicaid is growing as a percentage, within the state budget. And so it's becoming a real constraint, on the budget. So we've got, just fiscally as a state, there are real issues that this governor, the legislature is working to address. And so that's just a piece of the puzzle. But Bernice, I love how you're thinking about this or how you're bringing these issues up. I do think we have got to lean more heavily on the regions to understand what are you bringing to the table? What can we do to support you? But the state shouldn't be the resource, right, relative to enabling some of this. And so I think we've got to look at that. Your comment regarding housing, I think, it's been brought up a couple of times. But clearly, housing is an issue. Of the 15 ready regions, candidly, every ready region has approached this problem a little bit differently. So some are focused on housing, some are focused on parks. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things going on. And so candidly, it's week 5, but I'm planning to go on these listening tours. And I really want to understand for a specific ready region, what were the objectives? What are the objectives? How are you measuring the economic, outcome of these things? Because at the end of the day, these are real dollars that are being expended by the state and the taxpayers of the state of Indiana. So what is the economic benefit that's coming from these things? And how are we thinking about some of that? So we absolutely, I'm walking into a situation where, the dollars have already been kind of put out there, but the questions that I think are fair questions, just understanding, okay, even once these projects get completed, what should the expectations or the communication back to the taxpayers be in terms of, what benefits are they getting from it from an economic standpoint? And by the way, I don't know the answers to these questions, but I just think, every region's going to be a little bit different. And so us just collectively, as an administration, getting our arms around that, we don't want any more red tape than possibly needs to be. I mean, state government is known for lots of that, but, we want to remove the bureaucracy. But at the same time, we've kind of said, hey, we've got to get our arms around what's happened so that we can at least respond to questions that, this new administration is going to have to be able to answer relative to the taxpayer dollars that are being allocated. So I hope that helps it. And I think you're going to find with me, I'm going to move as aggressively as we can. My whole supply chain management experience, we went from a sub $10 million company to a NASDAQ 50 company in 7 years. So I'm used to operating at the speed of change. So we're going to operate as effectively and as quickly as we can, because these are all real issues that are not going to go away. And how do we address these the most effective? So again, long-winded answer to say, I hear you, loving to work, looking forward to working. It's week 5, got a lot to dig into here. Quarterly sessions going on, but I am already working to get some listening tours scheduled and make sure that I'm getting out just as quickly as possible into the state and actually hear from people. What's working, what's not working, what could we be doing differently? This is not going to be an organization that's going to be telling the regions what to do. It's really let us understand what you're trying to do. And do we need to tweak things? Do we need to adjust? Whatever it may be. So this is where I think you're going to see a big difference in commerce. I mean, we're going to kind of turn this pivot to being a supporting organization, not a forming organization that says this is what we're trying to do. I mean, I think we can lead on some issues, but at the same time, economic development, commerce is done on a regional basis.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer, and I certainly appreciate your leadership. And I think just getting out there and listening is probably the best starting place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Now's your time.
Well, I just appreciate, David, as you come back to state government to have a real impact on it. So I'm looking forward to your impact and appreciate everything. You'll always know I'll ask you the questions that come to mind. So, but I really appreciate your willingness to come back to service.
Well, thank you, Steve. And it's very kind of you. And I'm very honored to be in this role. And I think what you'll find for me, again, as we work together is this is going to be a collaborative effort. Not here to say we got all the answers, know what the issues are that the governor's asked us to address. We're going to monitor those things, but we're all in this together. I mean, this is not, like I said, we've just got to find a way, when successes are occurring, how we amplify those successes in the state. We're doing a lot of great things. I really feel strongly, if we never had another business come to Indiana in the next 4 years, we have a lot of upside opportunity with everything we've got going on within the state. And I think we are in a position of strength, not of weakness. And so I think it gives us the opportunity to figure out, okay, if we are other businesses in Indiana, who do we want? And how do we aggressively go after those organizations? And the best people to do that, Steve, in your case, is to sit down with Cook and say, like, within this ecosystem here, I mean, what else might make sense to have as part of what you're trying to do there, which will be different again than if we go into a different community. So you've got my commitment. I'm here because I care about our state. Got a passion for the areas that we talked about, and I'm going to work every day tirelessly to help us figure out how to solve some of these issues. And they're hard problems. These are not easy problems. But I think if we can focus on these 4 areas, which I think really gives us an opportunity to focus, and we set some real strong metrics around how we're going to hold ourselves accountable, I think we've got an opportunity to make some real difference for the businesses and the individuals that live in this state and want to be a part of this state. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time. Again, I want to thank Elaine, and I'll make sure we get my contact information too. But if you got follow-up questions, or you need me to talk about something, or you want me to come visit, in the interim, whatever it is, just know that I'm available and here to support you. Oh, is it? Okay.
Jamie has a question. She has her hand raised. Jamie Butler Smith.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello. Hi, welcome, Secretary Adams. My name is Jamie Buller Smith. I apologize. I am homesick with the flu, but I felt this was important enough.
Thank you for being on the call.
Well, I feel strongly about Indiana tourism and Indiana as a whole, and I'm excited to hear the 4 steps. They're very encouraging. And what I hear you saying when you're talking about the why Indiana is something that I think that the Indiana Tourism Association has talked about for years, is we want people to love living here, right? And you're creating programs economically that is going to help address that. I think that's a big issue when it comes to Indiana's image, is people need to love living here. And I think a lot of people do. But I think we can certainly do a better job of reminding them why Indiana is such a great state, both people that live here and both people that live outside of the state. So I'm encouraged to hear these programs. And as you talk about those businesses, I wanted to ask about the Main Street Entrepreneur Program and even the investment in new business. Where does destination development fit into this piece, where we're talking about creating tech hubs and economic environments that are your typical corporate businesses? Is there thought to keep that conversation of destination development investment going, and looking at ways that we can make Indiana a quality place where people want to live and where they can have a good quality of life that they can feel? It isn't always a big shiny building, but it isn't always, healthcare is great, but sometimes they'd like a nice trail or a park or a good place to eat. That's a big piece of it as well.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is yes. Just a blanket yes. The tourism piece is important. I think, Jamie, the thing that we need to think about, and again, I'm not here to say I've got the answer for what that looks like, is, to your point, people think about a trail, but they think about a trail in a location, right? And so again, if you think about when people talk about a community, they don't talk about Texas, Florida, Massachusetts, they talk about cities. And so one of the things, and again, I'm not prescribing this, I'm just saying something we need to think through is, how do we localize this as well to a particular area? That's not an easy thing to do. I mean, when we go outside the state, it's easy to talk as a state, but people don't think about states. They think about locations. They think about Indianapolis or Columbus or New Albany or Evans, or whatever it may be. And so I don't have the answer today, but I think we got to figure out how to localize some of this as well. That even if there's a broad reach, how do you bring it down to a local level? Because, I just don't think individuals think about like Indiana holistically. It's like, I'm thinking about moving to Indianapolis or West Lafayette. I just think we got to think through that. It's not an easy thing to do, but I continue to challenge my own team in the short time I've been here that we're branding Indiana, and we're trying to brand Indiana, but businesses, individuals don't think about the world that way. They think about cities. Like if I think about Texas, I think about Austin, Houston, and Dallas. That's what I think about. I don't think about a whole bunch else. I mean, San Antonio might be a neat tourism place, but isn't necessarily, what I think about when I think about the economy if I'm looking for a job. So I just think we've got to have some conversations around, like, when we're targeting, what are we trying to target and why? And if it's to get them to visit, okay, that may be one story. Okay, it's a visitation thing. We're just here to, go see our parks. Two, if it's part of a broader strategy that we're trying to target, individuals. I don't know if you've seen the Ohio commercial, but I think it's clever. But if we're targeting individuals, okay, is there ability to, what's the message that'll resonate with them and where? Is there something we're trying to get them to a destination like in Indianapolis or Evansville, or whatever it may be? And if we're talking to businesses, what is it we're trying to communicate to them as to what's important about, being a part of our state or some location? And again, I think that's going to vary depending on where you're at. So I don't have the answers. I'd love to get input to this process as we think through it. I'm just suggesting that I think trying to think about this at a state when we're talking to the outside world, or even
it's
like
not
Indiana.
marketing in the state, it's marketing regionally.
Yeah, who is this? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think somebody just is not on mute. There.
Lindsay,
No.
you might.
I just listened to the whole.
Well, but anyway, so I think this is just a conversation we need to, just let's think through a little bit more about this and what are we trying to achieve? I mean, that's where I always start with. What are we trying to achieve? Based in that, then what are the mechanisms to do that? And it may vary. But I also want to figure out how we leverage, what regions are trying to do too. And candidly, if they got dollars that are applied for that, let's leverage their dollars. It may still be part of our message, but kind of leverage some of the things they're doing. So when they're out marketing or talking, they're communicating some of the things that we think are important as well. So here in Indianapolis, as example, let their folks go out and tell whatever story they want to tell, but can we get them to have it be inclusive of the things that are important that we're trying to tell as well?
Thank you. I look forward to working with you. Very excited.
Likewise. Thank you. Lindsay, did you have something?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
One more thing I might mention, we're not having a formal foundation board meeting today, but we will in the next couple of weeks. We need to do some bylaw cleanup, given our new entity and where we're located now. So I'll get that out to everybody and we'll do that, like I said, in the next couple of weeks, but virtually. So more for the foundation board.
Awesome.
All right.
Next meeting is May 14th.
So I want to thank you all. I know these are volunteer roles. I really appreciate your commitment to the state, commitment to this organization, commitment to what we're working to do, and look forward to working with you all. So with that,
Motion to adjourn.
we have a motion.
So moved.
Don't move.
Hey,
So
Thanks,
moved.
everybody.
Thank you again.
pleasure to meet you all.
Good to see you
Thank
all.
you.
Take care.
Bye now. All right.